There haven't been many decent werewolf movies over the years. Most of them are pretty dreadful. For every American werewolf in London, there's an American werewolf in Paris. For every The Howling, there are literally dozens of low-grade B movies that promise so much but never quite go for the jugular. I must admit I had high hopes for Wolfman. The trailer looked decent, but what really got me so eager to part with my hard-earned cash while working for the man was the fact that it was written and directed by Leigh Whannell. I have enjoyed some of Whannell's previous movies. They have continuously surprised me. I was blown away by the first Saw movie, a brutally horrific but ingenious serial killer flick, a 7 on steroids with a clever twist that I didn't see coming. I originally thought the Insidious films were going to be absolute dog shit, but I found the first 2 movies tremendously enjoyable. The malevolent spirits, the creepy use of music, the nail-scratchingly hair-raising jump scares. And there was even some laughs in there too. Leigh Whannell clearly has talent when it comes to writing dark and unsettling horror, which is why I'm scratching my head, wondering how he came up with such an atrocious movie. My only thinking is that he must have been on some seriously hardcore ketamine, because Wolfman is so bad, I'm surprised he's willing to put his name to it. The trailer led me to believe that this was going to be a dark, gritty body horror, a horrifying metamorphosis where a loving husband and father turns into a gruesome werewolf who would hunt down and do horrid things to his family. But instead, we got this pile of old bollocks. I honestly can't work out why this film even exists. It's so bad it even makes 2010's The Wolfman with Benicio del Toro look good. Usually I try and avoid too many spoilers, but this film is just so bad, I feel it's my duty to warn people away. In fact, I should get a medal if I dissuade anyone from watching this crap. So if you haven't seen Wolfman, and you don't want me to give away the whole story, then you might want to drop out now. The movie starts with a father and son on a hunting trip deep in the wilderness. The father is a bit of a twat. For some reason he seems desperate to teach his son Blake to look after himself, but then proceeds to have a pop at him as soon as he wanders off and tries to prove himself. To be honest, this whole intro confused me. The father seems determined to keep his son safe, so why then does he drag him deep into the woods where he knows there might be werewolves lurking about? Are they there to hunt the werewolf? And if that's the case, why does the father go and hide in a cupboard as soon as it shows up? Anyway, what the hell, let's just go with it. Then we skip forward in time to when Blake is all grown up. He has a daughter of his own who he really loves and cares about. How do we know this? Because he tells us over and over again that he loves her. They have this really cute thing that they do where she puts her hand on his head and asks, "Daddy, what am I thinking?" And the whole... Then Ruth from Ozark makes an appearance. She's married to Blake. We know she's unhappy in her marriage because she tells us. She's also regretful that she's not close to her daughter. How do we know this? Because she tells us. Luckily though, Blake has a great idea to make everything better. He's got a foolproof plan to rekindle the romance, and there's nothing to get the love juices flowing like taking a trip to clear out a load of old worthless shit from a rundown shack in the middle of butt-fuck nowhere.
I give us about 20 minutes before our first ass raping.
Who says romance is dead? Anyway, needless to say, this little romantic getaway doesn't go quite as expected. They pick up the most creepy and pervy would-be rapist hitchhiker you can imagine. Then to top it off, Blake runs his truck off the road and straight into a tree whilst avoiding a werewolf. Next time, run over the big scary thing with claws. How about that for an idea? Dickhead! Anyway, one thing leads to another, and the family are chased by the werewolf, and are forced to take shelter in Blake's father's derelict cottage. This is when things start to go hilariously wrong. Whilst escaping, Blake got himself scratched by the werewolf, which means he's shit out of luck. One of the few things I did like about Wolfman was the angle they took with the whole werewolf contagion, making it some kind of disease rather than something supernatural. But unfortunately, they just didn't make the most of it. I got the impression they were trying to recreate the vibe from 1986's The Fly, but the transformation wasn't nearly as horrific or protracted. In The Fly, we literally see Seth Brundle slowly falling to pieces. Parts of his body fall off in front of his girlfriend. She can only sit and watch as the person she cares about transforms into something truly horrific. What also makes the transformation in The Fly so terrible is that Seth Brundle's character fully understands what is happening to him. He fully realises the monster he is becoming. He is also able to communicate everything he is thinking and feeling. Conversely, Blake in Wolfman doesn't understand anything. He can't communicate. His reality changes. He hallucinates. And for me, that makes his transformation less harrowing. Another huge mistake this movie makes is having another Wolfman villain. It greatly diminishes the threat of Blake's own transformation, because there was a greater danger lurking outside the cottage. Blake continually steps in to save his family. This is nothing like Seth Brundle's Fly, who lost all semblance of his humanity. He was cruel and evil. He embraced his new world of insect politics. However, Wolfman was more like watching Oz save Willow in an episode of Buffy the Vampire Slayer. As for the rival werewolf, it was obvious that this was going to be Blake's father. It has to be one of the worst and most obvious twists of all time. But not only was it obvious, but it also didn't really make a lot of sense, especially given Blake's dad had been missing for so many years. What had he been doing all this time? He just decides to turn up one night while his son's visiting? Had he not harmed or killed anyone during that time? Not only that, but the Wolfman effects were absolutely terrible. Blake didn't even look like a werewolf. He looked more like Steve Pemberton playing a sex offender on League of Gentlemen.
Why did you force her? I didn't force her! I didn't force her.
Wolfman is a shocking movie. To be honest, it's the worst thing to happen to werewolves since Twilight. In fact, Taylor Lautner is probably more scary than the werewolves in this movie.
This means more to the office than you. And yet, do you hear any complaints when I do this? These pencils more important. These pens more important. These paper clips more important. You miserable little crybaby. You don't like it here, leave.